Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be adjusting the valves on a 1965 BMW R50/2. The first step is using your 14mm socket to remove the center bolt of the valve cover and set that aside. And there's also two 10mm nuts on both sides of the valve cover. So you're also going to have to remove both of them. Okay, now that you have your valve covers off, you're going to want to remove your spark plugs, which are already done, and you're going to want to set your engine to top dead center. So if you come around here, what I like to use, this is a little hack of mine, use a screwdriver, put the screwdriver in the spark plug hole, set your transmission up to top gear, and with your spark plugs out, just slowly bump your wheel until you feel the piston contact the tip of the screwdriver right there, and then just move this. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but you can see the screwdriver move, and you want to get it right at top dead center. And if you do it right, when you look down in here in your timing plug, you should see the top dead center mark right there. I have a blue paint pen highlighting it. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that on the camera. So now one side of the cylinder is going to be at top dead center and the other side is going to be on overlap. Right now it really doesn't matter which one's where, but we know that this one's on overlap because there's no play in the valves there. And if we head around to the other side, there should be some play over here. So we'll start with this side first. So it doesn't matter if you start with your intake or exhaust first, but we'll wipe our feeler gauges clean. We need to put that in there. And you should adjust your valve spec. The feeler gauges should feel as if you're dragging it across a magnet. It shouldn't be so tight that it'll hold your feeler gauges up. To me, this actually seems pretty loose. You see how just the weight of the feeler gauges there is enough to make them fall out. So this side here is, I would actually tighten this side up. Typically, valves, when you adjust these, they wear in, so they actually get tighter as the valve face wears. And on the intake side here, this here seems, it's a little subjective to who's working on it, but that to me seems good. If you can kind of see, you know, I'm not putting any effort into it. The feeler gauge really isn't bending as kind of feel like the best analogy I could use is it feels like you're dragging it across a magnet. So it's enough to hold the weight of the feeler gauges up. And when I put it in there, there's no play there. So it's taken up that gap, so I wouldn't adjust the intake side, but I would tighten up this side. So let's tighten up the exhaust. So to do that, you're gonna wanna loosen this nut. This is actually with a 12mm wrench. I forgot to call that out earlier. So you're gonna wanna loosen this up. We'll put this in here, and then with my finger, I'll tighten up if you come around here, and the push rod here, I'm just gonna barely, not blurry or anything, is it? I'm gonna barely just snug this up with my hand until there's a good gap there, the correct gap. You can kind of see with the weight of the feeler gauges, it's just enough to go a little bit tighter. So that to me feels really good. Like I said, it should feel as if you're dragging it across a magnet. When you're trying to shove it in there, your feeler gauges shouldn't be buckling or anything at all. Just very smooth. And it should be able to at least hold up the weight of the feeler gauges. You don't want to compress that spring and get a bad measurement. So now you're just going to hold that nut kind of right there. And then snug this one down, and this nut might turn as you tighten that up. So you're gonna wanna kinda just position it to a point when you tighten this nut, that if this turns with it, get that snugged up, just kind of like that. And then you're gonna wanna recheck this. So right there, I would say is perfect. You know, just enough to hold up the weight of the gauge, and it goes in nice, and then it's tight. So with that, we should have a pretty good running machine. So we'll just recheck this. You know, while you're here, keep checking it, make sure nothing changes. Everything here seems really good. All right, so let's head over to the other side. So now this side is on top dead center overlap, where both valves are open. So we're gonna put our screwdriver back in there. Then we're gonna go down, just do one rotation of the engine. So you can see, use your screwdriver. So right there is top dead center. And if you look in your hole here, you can see that blue paint pen mark again. All right, so now let's check this side. So there should be play here, as you can see here. All right, so let's do the intake side first. Right there, again, that feels really good. There's no play there, you know, goes in and out easily without any resistance or any struggle. Can hold up the it feels as if you're dragging it across a magnet. That's the best way I could describe it. And over on the exhaust side here, we'll check it. And then that actually feels really good as well. So these valves are in pretty good shape. Feel that, you know, it's strong enough that it can hold up the weight of the feeler gauge. And when the feeler gauge is in there, there's no play. You know, and it can go in and out pretty easily without buckling that feeler gauge. These are, you know, they're pretty thin. So it can just slip right up in there very easily. So I wouldn't adjust these. But if I were to adjust it, like I said, we'll loosen up this nut, and then with your hand, just tighten or loosen this nut, and that's gonna adjust your valve clearance. And then you'll snug this nut back up, and that'll adjust that clearance there. All right, so I'm just removing these valve cover gaskets. They're pretty old and I could see them leaking, and while we're here, I had some new ones, so we're just gonna put some new ones in. To get these out, sometimes they can stick to the head. I actually had pretty good luck getting this one off. Let's go over here and see. I like to just use a flat-headed screwdriver, and just, you don't want to damage the sealing surface, but in the center here where it's not sealing, just kind of, you know, get it started like that. You can kind of work your way around, but a lot of times these gaskets can get stuck on here, or someone else who did it in the past used some sort of silicone to hold them on, and that just kind of creates a nightmare for everyone. So if you just kind of take your time and work your way around it, you shouldn't have a problem getting these off. And then just make sure when you put your new gaskets on that your both sealing surfaces on the valve cover and on the head are in good shape. You can see that tore there, but that went pretty smoothly. All right, so now I'm just cleaning up these gasket surfaces with just some brake clean to help that gasket get all this stuff. Any spot where it might not seal, just scrape it off to give it the best chance of sealing possible. These things are pretty prone to leaking at the valve cover there. We'll put our new gasket here. Right here, we'll actually get these out of here. So let's clean up this surface as well. Kind of wipe off any contaminants or anything that might prevent this from sealing up like we want it to. These all clean. As you can see, it's nice and clean there. Put the gasket over those two. And then this. Just line everything up. Just like that. So then there's this nut here, that stud that this right here is going on to can snap off, or you can pull the threads out of the head, which will can be a little bit of a nightmare. To avoid that, you're gonna want to torque that up to, or just snug it up yourself. But if you don't have a good feel, I would suggest using a torque wrench. So then we're getting these two 10mm nuts that are holding the valve cover on. Getting those started with the washer that came off there, just like how we took it apart. Drop the nut in there. So it's kind of a pain if you got bigger fingers. But we'll get that there. And like I said, the center nut here, we're just snugging this up. I mean, doesn't need to be super tight, but just snug. And then these nuts back here are the same. They're just little studs. They don't need to be super tight. You know, you really can't get a torque wrench in there, but just snug them up. You don't need to reef them down super tight. You're just gonna do more harm than good that way. All right, thanks for watching. And remember that all my videos are viewer suggested. And if you have a topic you want to see covered, please mention it in the comments below. Have a safe ride.